On the afternoon of August 15, 1941, a petite 24-year-old Belgian woman walked into the British consulate in Bilbao, Spain. She wasn't alone. With her were three exhausted Allied soldiers. She had just guided them on an incredible 800-kilometer journey through Nazi-occupied territory, a dangerous trek that even took them over the Pyrenees Mountains. The British diplomats in the consulate just couldn't believe it. How could this young, attractive woman, who looked barely 20, have pulled off such an impossible feat? They were convinced it had to be a German trap. But this woman, Andrée de Jongh, codenamed Day-Day, was about to prove them all spectacularly wrong. Over the next 17 months, Day-Day would personally guide 118 Allied airmen to freedom, making 24 round trips over the treacherous Pyrenees. The escape network she started, called the Comet Line, would go on to save a total of 776 Allied personnel, making it the most successful escape network of World War II. This is the almost forgotten story of the woman the Germans called the little girl. The very things that made others underestimate her, her youth and her gender, were what hindered her, but in the end, they were also what ultimately saved her life. When World War II broke out across Europe, Andrée de Jongh was just 23 years old. Born in Belgium, she had already lived through one German occupation as a child during the First World War, an experience that shaped her entire life. Her father, Frederick, was a primary school headmaster who saw a fire in his daughter. He instilled in her a powerful sense of justice and nicknamed her his little cyclone because of her unstoppable will to make things happen. But the biggest influence on her came from a story her father told her about Edith Cavell. Cavell was a British Red Cross nurse who was executed by the Germans in 1915 for helping around 200 Allied soldiers escape occupied Belgium. This story of a woman martyred in her own hometown haunted and inspired Andrée. She decided to become a nurse, just like Cavell, and even worked as a commercial artist for a time. Wenn während Forcen in Belgien im Mai 1940 Andrée, nun 23, immediat movte nach Brüssel und bekam eine Red Kreuz-Volontär. Sie begann helfende Captured Allied Troops, senden Letter home für denen, finden sicher Häuser für die Left Behind nach Dunkirk und geben denen zivilen Kleidung und Fake ID Papers. But just hiding these men wasn't enough. They needed to get back to Britain to rejoin the fight. So, in the spring of 1941, Andrée gathered her friends, Arnold de Pay, Henri de Blequy, and Baron Jacques Donny, to create an escape route. The group suffered a blow almost immediately when one of their members was arrested. Undeterred, another member, Arnold de Pay, traveled to southwestern France, a place he knew well, to set up the southern connections they would need to get the men across the border. Their first major attempt to get a group across was a disaster, teaching Andrée a crucial lesson. They had to go with the escapees all the way to the British consulate. For their next operation in August 1941, they split into two groups. One was betrayed and arrested, but Andrée's group, with a Basque smuggler's help, made it safely across the border and to the consulate in Bilbao. That successful trip was the moment that changed everything. The British diplomats, who at first thought Andrée was a German spy, were now beginning to believe her. After weeks of suspicion and telegrams flying between Spain and London, MI9, the British intelligence agency, finally agreed to fund the escape line. The Comet Line, as it came to be known, had a standard route. It started with a train from Brussels to Paris, then another train to the south of France. From there, it was a perilous 8-hour night march on foot over the Pyrenees Mountains into Spain. Before each dangerous journey, Andrée had a special ritual. She would introduce herself and say, "My name is Andrée, but I want you to call me by my code name, Day-Day, which means little mother." From now on, I will be your little mother, and you will be my little children. It is my job to get my children to Spain and to freedom." Though some of the airmen were skeptical at first, they quickly learned that Day was anything but a schoolgirl. They described her as having eyes absolutely burning with an air of supreme confidence. It was this very quality, her frail appearance and young age, that became her greatest weapon. The Germans simply couldn't imagine that a young woman could be the leader of such a complex underground network. But on the night of January 15, 1943, her luck ran out. An informant betrayed them, and Andrée was arrested by the Gestapo. The Germans interrogated her relentlessly, but they refused to believe she was the mastermind. This saved her life. Instead of being executed as a resistance leader, she was sentenced to imprisonment. For 28 months, she endured the horrors of Ravensbrück and Mauthausen concentration camps until she was finally liberated by the U.S. Army in April 1945. Sadly, many of her friends and family were not so lucky. Her own father, Frederick, was arrested and executed. The casualties among the Comet Line helpers were staggering. Nearly 300 of the 3,000 volunteers were killed or died in camps. Yet many also survived, including the 3 British airmen who were captured with Andrée. After the war, Andrée finally fulfilled the dream she had since she was 15. She became a nurse in leprosy hospitals across Africa. She was honored by 4 nations, receiving the George Medal in Buckingham Palace, the Medal of Freedom from the United States, and was even made a countess by the King of Belgium. Andrée passed away in 2007 at the age of 90. But perhaps her truest monument is simpler than any medal or title. It lives on in the hundreds of Allied airmen who returned home, raised families, and never stopped telling the story of the young Belgian woman who saved them, and in the thousands of their descendants who owe their very existence to a petite, little mother who achieved the impossible.